All right, today we're diving into one of the most legendary essays to ever come out of Silicon Valley, Paul Graham's Do Things That Don't Scale. And we're going to uncover a truth about how great companies get started that is, well, completely the opposite of what most people think. You've heard this a million times, right? It's the startup dream. You build this incredible product, you push it out into the world, and boom, the users just show up. It's a really nice thought, but you know what? It's a myth. And here's where we get a dose of reality. That whole build it and they will come idea, it almost never, ever happens. The truth is, startups don't just achieve liftoff on their own. Nope. The founders have to get in there and literally push the thing off the ground. So if they don't just magically take off, what actually happens? Well, it takes this deliberate and honestly pretty exhausting push to get things moving. Think of it less like a sleek rocket launch and more like trying to start a really old car on a freezing cold morning. This is the metaphor Paul Graham uses, and it's just perfect. You know, before cars had electric starters, you had to physically get out and crank the engine to get it going. It was this totally separate, manual, sweaty process. But once the engine caught, it would run on its own. That crank? Well, that's your job as a founder. Okay, so what is the most common form of cranking the engine? It's this. You have to go out and get your very first users by hand. You can't just sit back and wait for them to find you. You have to go to them. And if you want to see a masterclass in how this is done, you just have to look at Stripe. I mean, here's a company with a product that solved a huge, obvious problem. But they didn't wait. Oh no, they became legendary for their relentless, hands-on, face-to-face approach. In fact, they came up with a technique that was so effective, people started calling it the Collison installation. They wouldn't just ask, hey, want to try Stripe? And then, send over a link a few days later. The instant someone said yes, they'd say, awesome, give me your laptop. And they would set them up right then and there. No friction, no delay, no chance for that person to get distracted and forget. So if this is so powerful, why don't more founders do it? Well, Paul Graham boils it down to two big things. First, there's a mix of shyness and, let's be honest, laziness. It's just cozier to sit and write code than to go talk to strangers. And second, the numbers just feel tiny. Getting one user at a time feels like you're getting nowhere. But see, focusing on that one user at a time is looking at the wrong number. The metric that really truly matters is your weekly growth rate. And a really good target to aim for is 10%. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but if you can hit it consistently, this is where the magic happens. This is the absolute power of compound growth. Let's say you start with just 100 users. If you grow that by 10% every single week, after a year, you've got 14,000. After 2 years, you're at 2 million. All of a sudden, recruiting those first few users by hand doesn't seem so pointless anymore, does it? And it's not just techie examples like Stripe. Think about Airbnb. Today, they're this massive global giant, but in the early days, they were so close to failing that the founders literally flew to New York and went door to door with their rolly bags to meet hosts, recruit new ones, and help them take better pictures of their apartments. That unscalable, heroic effort, it's what saved them. Okay, so getting users is one thing. But once you have them, you have to do something even more unscalable. You have to go to extraordinary lengths to make them incredibly, ridiculously happy. I mean, this quote says it all. This should be your goal. You want them to feel like this was one of the best decisions they've ever made. A great example is Wufoo. The founders used to send a handwritten thank you note to every single person who signed up. Can you imagine getting that in the mail today? You would never forget it. And this, right here, is your superpower as a small startup. A big company just can't do this stuff, right? Tim Cook is not sending you a handwritten note when you buy an iPhone. But you can. You can give a level of personal service that is physically impossible for a big company to replicate. And when you do that, you're not just getting a customer, you're building a fan. You're making them feel like they're part of the journey. So this kind of redefines what Steve Jobs meant by insanely great, at least for an early stage company. Your product probably isn't perfect yet. It's got bugs, it's missing features, but you can still create an insanely great experience by making up for those flaws with an obsessive, overwhelming level of service and personal attention. Now, this intense focus on the user experience flows right into our next unscalable tactic, which is all about building things with your own two hands. And that means doing things manually that you know deep down you're eventually going to have to automate, but just not yet. One of the key strategies here is what Graham calls the contained fire. The idea is instead of trying to launch to everyone, everywhere, you pick a deliberately narrow, small market, and you focus all your energy in getting that one little segment super, super hot, full of passionate users, before you even think about expanding.
And the classic example of this is, of course, Facebook. It started just for Harvard students. That's it. That super narrow focus made it feel like their site, their private club. It caught on like wildfire. And only after they completely owned that one small pond did they start slowly, methodically adding more logs to the fire.
And there are all kinds of other ways to do this. You can pull a Meraki and actually assemble your first hardware products yourself. You could act like a consultant and just build your software for one single perfect user at first. Or you can even be the software, manually doing tasks behind the scenes that will one day be done by code. So it's so important to reframe all of this hard manual work. You have to stop thinking of it as a chore you have to suffer through. Because in reality, it's your single greatest strategic advantage as a startup.
This is exactly why all those shortcuts that founders dream about usually don't work. The big press launch, the massive partnership with a huge company. They're so tempting because they feel like they let you skip all the hard work. But that hard work, that's the whole point.
And that brings us to maybe the most important idea in the whole essay. A startup idea isn't just a thing. It's not just the product. It's a vector. It's the combination of what you build plus the unscalable things you do to get it going. You need both. One without the other just doesn't work.
And the most beautiful part of all this is that these early, unscalable actions, they don't just disappear. They bake themselves into the DNA of your company. That early hustle to find users, that obsession with making them happy, that becomes your culture. It sticks, and it makes your company better forever. So, I'll leave you with this one simple question. It doesn't matter if you're a founder or just trying to get a project off the ground. Ask yourself, what unscalable, manual, but incredibly powerful thing are you going to do this week to get your engine started?